words from Elie Wiesel's Night. Men to the left, women to the right. 8 words, spoken quietly, indifferently, without emotion. 8 simple, short words. Yet that was the moment when I left my mother. There was no time to think, and I already felt my father's hand press against mine. We were alone. In a fraction of a second, I could see my mother, my sisters move to the right. My younger sister, Tipora, was holding mother's hand, and I saw them walking farther and farther away. Mother was stroking my sister's blonde hair as if to protect her, and I walked on with my father, with the men. I didn't know that this was the moment, in time, in the place where I was leaving my mother and Tipora forever. As I mentioned, these are the words of Nobel Peace Prize winner Elie Wiesel. And they were taken from his haunting memoir, Night, that described his forced arrival at a place that he had never been before, nor had he ever heard of before. A place called Auschwitz. A place now synonymous with evil. An earthly place now synonymous with the very fires of hell. In light of the recent events in Paris and in Beirut, I didn't feel comfortable in proceeding with the sermon that I had prepared for today. That message can wait for some other time. Because on this day, we hold our hearts open to those who've suffered. Suffered in the tragedies in Paris and Beirut, and we hold our hearts open to those families who lost loved ones in the crash of the Russian airliner over Egypt. These tragedies and that crash, evil perpetrated by humanity on humanity. I wrote this sermon yesterday. That's not how I normally work. I'm normally more prepared. So I've been thinking about a lot of these things in the last 36 hours. But watching Paris on Friday evening brought back memories of 9/11 for me somewhat. It was surreal. What is happening? Why is this happening? And I can't help but think that this terror might be brought to our shores someday. I hope not, but the chances are that it will probably be a matter of when rather than a matter of if. I can't help but think of that. To be clear, I think that the indiscriminate targeting of innocent civilians is the worst form of evil imaginable. Pure evil. This morning's reading on evil was written by Yvonne Guevara. She's a Brazilian nun and a self-described ecofeminist and liberation theologian. She's been silenced numerous times, too many to count probably, by the Pope, by previous popes. I don't know about this Pope. But basically her reading is a scathing indictment of the capitalistic West, but really for all of humanity. She describes evil as those who hoard capital, depriving others, the majority of the people, from their rightful share. She describes evil as those who exploit the earth for profit, as the earth being merely there for a capital formation. She describes evil as those who deem themselves to be veritable gods upon the earth, empire builders that dominate everything, insinuating themselves into people's inner beings, inducing them to believe in their own inferiority. She depicts a world where the majority is simply treated as nobodies, as objects, or at best, a means to an end, to be used, to be exploited. what does the exposure to such evil do to a person? Might it cause one, also under the machinations of others, to fly planes into buildings, shoot people indiscriminately in concert halls, strap bombs to themselves and kill others and themselves because they've been told all their lives that their lives don't matter anyway? When I go on YouTube and watch the arrest of Sandra Bland, I don't know if you know Sandra Bland, she's an African-American woman who was followed by the police, and then when she pulled over to let him by, without signaling, she became, well, she was always the target. She was pulled over. You can watch this on YouTube, the whole thing. After she's pulled over, she verbally lashes out at the police officer because she simply can't take it anymore. This is my opinion. She can't take it anymore. She says many things that African Americans typically don't say, but often would love to say to that officer. I believe that Sandra Bland was simply broken by a system that doesn't fail to, it refuses to acknowledge her humanity. And I obviously don't know how she felt about her words afterwards, but I can't help but feel that the culture or the system in which she was raised kind of led her to feel that she was the one who was guilty. That this twisted system that we sometimes, that we have, successfully insinuated itself into her very being and induced her to believe in her own inferiority. So what can we do to confront the many faces of evil? Gandhi used nonviolent tactics, ahimsa, which means not harming, satyagraha, which means like a truth force. So but many people misunderstand Gandhi's tactics. They interpret Gandhi's tactics as a way to show the oppressor their own oppression by not fighting back. And it did that. It did do that. But the real root, the real methodology, the real theory behind his nonviolent movement was relational. Basically, I'll paraphrase, but the philosophy is that I cannot have a relationship with you if I'm hurting you, if I'm being violent to you. And even though you hurt me, I'm not going to fight back. Because that would be an insult to your very humanity. And I will not be able to have a relationship with you moving forward. That's really what the root is about. That hopefully after his oppressors, the British government, saw his humanity, then maybe they could walk together in relationship. And I believe, my opinion here, that Martin Luther King followed the same path. Because Gandhi actually lived in England for a while. He knew their culture. And maybe he saw them as oppressors, but maybe through that, he saw their civility, their inherent worth and dignity with which he could have a relationship with moving forward. And I believe Martin Luther King saw the same thing in his oppressors and their oppressors. That, once we get through this, we will be able to have a relationship and walk together. Well, ISIS has apparently claimed responsibility for the Paris and the Beirut attacks, and they've also claimed responsibility for the downing of the Russian airliner, at least as of yesterday. I don't know if something happened overnight, and there will be a response of some kind. But the question is, should the tenets of ahimsa and nonviolence also be applicable in this situation? Can ISIS be a group with which we can have a future relationship? Can we see their humanity? Can we see their inherent worth and dignity? And as you use, what does it mean if we say no to that? Believing in inherent worth and dignity does not preclude one from also believing that we have an inherent darker side to our nature, all of us. So there will be a response. It may be a military, violent response. It may be a nonviolent response. There may be no response. Instead of responding, reacting to things that have happened already in the past, might there be alternatives? In Albert Camus' book, The Plague, a plague is spread by rats in a once happy city, a city that is symbolic. The evil of the plague is symbolic of Nazi evil infesting Europe. But Camus believes that evil must be proactively and actively resisted on all fronts. But the interesting, haunting thing about the book is that once the evil is past, we seem to have this amnesia about what we did. And we start to move on and forget the evils of the past. We forget how that the evil can once again raise its head and infest our lives and hurt ourselves, hurt us, and our loved ones. And at the end of the book, Camus writes, "And indeed, as he listened to the cries of joy rising from the town, Ryu, the main character, remembered that such a joy is always imperiled. He knew what those jubilant crowds did not know, but could have learned from books, that the plague bacillus never dies or disappears for good, that it can lie dormant for years and years in furniture and linen chests, that it bides its time in bedrooms and cellars and trunks and bookshelves, and that perhaps the day would come when, for the bane and the enlightening of men, it would rouse up its rats again and send them forth to die in a happy city." In a sense, we haven't forgotten 9/11. We have security checkpoints at Steeler games, and we take our shoes off when we go on flights. I don't know if we've changed culturally since 9/11, or socially. I don't know if we've changed who we are. Does Yvonne Guevara's critique apply to us? There are groups that are trying to move the solutions forward before the symptoms can manifest themselves, before reactions are necessary. There's an organization in Washington, D.C. called the Alliance for Peace Building. It's an organization that seeks to put structures in place before violence starts. It supports inherently non-oppressive structures to help create societies where all lives truly matter, where none are told to believe in their own inferiority or accept their own ignorance. A tall order, a very tall order. Maybe it's not too late to be proactive with ISIS, but I believe we're now in the realm of reaction and response. And again, whatever their motives, I can feel comfortable with labeling their actions under the banner of evil and no other banner. And it's hard for me to have sympathy for them. But even those who subscribe to the hatred of ISIS were all little children once. Little children who liked to be read to, who wanted nothing more than to be held in their mother's arms. Possibly in response to Camus, Elie Wiesel dedicated his life to keeping the Holocaust in the memory of all peoples, so that the rats may never again infest a happy city. In his 1986 Nobel Prize acceptance speech, Elie Wiesel imagined his younger self, the one in Auschwitz, turning to his older self and asking, "Tell me, what have you done with my future? What have you done with our life?" And Elie Wiesel replies, I tell them that I've tried. That I've tried to keep the memory alive. That I've tried to fight those who would forget. Because if we forget, we are guilty. We are all accomplices. So may we not forget. May we keep the memory alive. And may we work for preemptive solutions. May it be so.